Welcome back to the Berg podcast. Thanks for joining us today. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And our guest today is Brad.
How's it going?
And Brad, we were just talking about this. You were on the podcast, but it's been a while, right?
Several years.
Yeah, I should have looked this up because
he could be in the single digits.
he could have been like year one, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think
Definitely year one.
Year one, and we're almost 4 years in. Not quite. This will be 204.
204.
Something like that. Yeah, so we're close. But Brad, one of the podcast OG guests, back again. So
once every 4 years.
that's the natural cycle for having
we'll
Brad.
see you again in 2029 with Brad.
Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah, he'd be just as happy if it took longer. Is
if
that,
we skip it, it's okay.
Is that with leap years?
I didn't account for that, so that's all right.
I gotcha. Anyways, today we're talking about peer groups. So we had the chance last week, the three of us, to get together with some peers out of town for a couple days and spend some time talking about the industry, talking about our companies, their companies, things that we're dealing with, things that they're dealing with. And it's just a good opportunity. We try to do it every 6 months. It's a good opportunity to sort of like benchmark where things are industry-wide, because they're not all in our market. Actually, most of them are not in our market. But it's also a good opportunity to talk through like how they're handling issues, because by and large, regardless of size and scope, our issues are generally related or the same. So.
They are, and it's always a good meeting. It's a really good group. With 6 to 8 companies participating, depending on how many are available and able to be there.
Yeah.
Almost all in person this year. We really tried for the first time to do it virtually based on one of the companies wasn't able to be there but wanted to participate. I always find it really, really engaging because it's a smart group of people who have a lot of experience, do a lot of work and a lot of different variations of work. There's open shop, there's union, there's guys that really focus on industrial, there's guys that really have niche markets. Midwest Mole with their drilling. Yeah. So there's a lot of different minds in the room, and so it's really interesting to get everybody's perspective. And this time down, we were able to bring Brad with us, and Brad came down. So Brad had attended a different peer group with me years ago. That was, I think maybe 4 years ago.
Probably 3 years ago. Going back.
Pre-COVID, post-COVID.
I think that was post-COVID.
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 Yeah, post-COVID.
Yeah.
So 3-4 years ago. It was a different setup. It was a good peer group, but it was didn't have nearly the depth of knowledge this one does or experience. It didn't necessarily fit us. They did a really nice job with it, but it just didn't accomplish what we wanted to. And we were able to go out and find set up this group. And so it's worked really well. So, one of the things I was hoping to see in this is it's sort of, what did you think of the meeting, and you having been at almost all of the meetings? And Brad, what did you think about it in terms of first time in, but having seen the other peer group?
I think, sorry, I'm not trying to derail us immediately.
Oh, good. That's normally my job, Brad, in case you're unclear.
But I think I passed you guys in the airport that trip.
You did?
Yes, you were.
Aiden and I were in the wrong airport. So I was with Aiden on a recruiting visit, and our flight out of Orlando got canceled at the last minute, and so we just made a U-turn on the highway and drove to Tampa and booked flights on the way. And you guys, I think, were landing in Tampa roughly the same time frame, or maybe I had that backwards. Were we all in Orlando, or?
No, I think it was Tampa. I think you're right.
It was Tampa.
Yeah. So, but I just kind of remembered all of those things that. I was like, oh yeah, because you don't do it. You told me you don't like flying that much, and I was like, I've seen you at the airport before. Why? Where were you? So yeah, that was it.
Ironically, this time, as I continue to derail us, just based on some commitments Brad and I have and the times of flights out, we did not fly. Nope. So even though it was in Charlotte, we drove. It was about an 8-hour drive. Yeah. But I thought that also made it really interesting because going down, we're just driving. It's like we spent all day driving and different
found
people
Buc-ee's. Yeah,
we found Buc-ee's. We did find Buc-ee's on our way down. Yeah. We were each working. So whoever wasn't driving was talking or working. But on the way back, it was almost like we got to do like a debrief on the way back and talk through some of the stuff we had talked about there, but also some other stuff that just, because of being so locked in that window, that it was an environment where we could just have conversations.
Yeah, it's really the only reason I could attend. So
Yeah.
my plans changed pretty last minute. I was supposed to be moving Aiden into school, and his date got moved up. And so I kind of came to you, and I was like, "Hey, is there still a spot? And have you made your travel arrangements?" And you were kind of like, "Yes, we have, and there's space."
There's space. So I only charged Brian a small fee for the ride down.
Yeah, I was like, "Geez, I think it would have been cheaper to fly." No,
The Buc-ee's trip could have hurt us.
Yeah,
we could have really done some damage in there.
The snacks and jerky bill was a lot higher.
Yeah,
but
it's a good thing we didn't buy those squirrel seats.
Squirrel seats,
yeah,
for everybody.
Yeah,
that would have probably hurt it.
Yeah, but I totally agree. The driving, while at first seemed like it was going to be like miserable.
Yes.
Like, oh no, we're stuck in the car for 8 hours.
Stuck in the car with Dan for 8 hours, especially if I'm driving.
The company just sitting anywhere. Like, I don't do well in my office. Like we all work 8 to 10 hour days on every day, right?
Yeah.
5 to 6 days a week, and I don't do well with being stuck in my office for 8 to 10 hours. So then there's space to move. I get up, I go eat lunch, I leave the building, I make phone calls, whatever it might be. Sitting in the car for 8 hours, plus a couple of short stops.
Yeah,
it's kind of brutal.
But I was concerned it would be a long ride, especially when we knew the flights. I kept trying to talk myself into it, saying that by the time you drive to the airport, especially if we had flown out of Philly, right? You drive to Philly, you got to park. That's a whole hassle. You got to go through. Security or TSA, depending on what you have, and you got to go sit, and you got to be there early, so then you got to sit. I was like, by the time we do this, I only think we're saving about 2 hours, give or take.
Totally.
But you get to sit, 5 different places.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's probably like a 6 hour trip, including drive time to the airport, time waiting for the plane, all of those things. So, I mean, it really only took us 2 hours longer. But I think the reciprocal benefit of having been in the car together for those 16, 18 hours was tremendous. I mean, like the ride down was good conversation because we just sort of chit-chatted about things that were happening inside of our organization that normally would have been phone calls or Teams messages or walking between offices or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So to just do it in each other's ears for 8 hours was nice. But the ride home, I thought the stuff that we dug into post peer group meeting, I thought was really, really good. It was like a healthy conversation and like things that sometimes it's easier to talk about, like because no one else is around. So you can kind of like, everyone's got like a safe space to voice their opinions. And I thought it was good. I don't know if that conversation or those conversations would have happened if we were in an airplane.
Well, and also the duration. Like when you think about almost like a social lubricant situation where we had been together for so many hours, because ironically, then we finally had a vehicle there. We didn't fly down and like Uber to the hotel. And we always go to Charlotte. Usually go to Charlotte in the summer or late summer when we do it. We had a vehicle. We didn't need it. Like we didn't go. We didn't have time. We realized when we were leaving, I hadn't stepped outside the hotel other than to be just outside the hotel. Yeah. It was just the schedule was full and we timed it about as close as we could because of limited time before and after.
Right.
But I think so that played into it as well. We had spent so much time together that it was like we. What was the MTV show about when people stop the Real World? When people like stop and just start to be real. Like we just started to. You think about it, we were going to talk about things that, normally like you'd like...
The niceties wore off.
Right, like, well, sort of like, but like, how am I going to bring this up to Brian that I talk about this, right? But it's like we've already talked about everything else. All that's really left is to talk about things we wouldn't normally just say in passing.
Yeah.
So, Brad is yet to talk. Did you notice this? He's working his angle here. So.
Well, now this feels oddly like the peer group. Brad is like a casual observer here.
Yeah. And, you gotta wait and put yourself in at the right spot, right?
Timing it up.
Yeah. No, but I think driving was definitely like, because if you would have taken a bunch of notes and said, hey, when we get home, we're going to talk about these 5 different things. We get home, we're never together again, and those things kind of fall by the wayside. But being in the car for that long was like what's that movie where the guy locks the door to the bar and says, Now you just can't leave. You're stuck with me. So, so it's kind of like that. So, no, I think the time flew by too. So I don't think it was.
Yeah. On the way home, you're always like ready to be home. That's every trip. That's not this trip. It's like going down, there's the anticipation of going to do something. Whether or not it's like vacation, fun, even like getting to somewhere, I feel like usually is an easier trip than getting home.
Yeah.
But getting home it went fast.
I felt the reverse this time because I realized that after the fact that I think we talked for 3 or 4 hours at some point of that drive in like the Virginia, North Carolina area.
Yeah.
That we really got into a couple topics that needed to be talked about and that were were not examined in the peer group, but were ancillary pieces of discussions at the peer group that like put it in a situation where you and Brad had a conversation and then we had a conversation. All of a sudden we were able to get to a spot where we could really talk about this openly. And there was, like you said, nobody there, right? Which is part of it. Like it's hard. We want to always be as open and transparent as we can, but some conversations really need to happen because you're working them out, right? Like not like the end result of almost everything we talk at the peer group about, you could talk to anybody in any one of the companies about. Mm-hmm. But the like getting there is what's tricky because you have to be vulnerable about it. You have to be open about it. You have to, accept the mistakes and how it happened and get in, maybe even break into how it happened.
Yeah.
And those pieces are more difficult to have out in the open just because they're deeper than just how the company runs. It goes into interpersonal relationships. It goes into decision making. It goes into how you operate as a person. You know what I mean? So all those that's a big thing with the peer group. That with Brad being there for the first time is you didn't really know those guys. Now, ironically, I think Brad could actually speak to when after the peer group meeting itself proper. We go out to dinner and then usually end up somewhere. And Brad spent a fair amount of time the second night with Stephen and Heath and Matt were there. You were down there for a while. I was down there, and then you had left. I think a couple other people were there and left. I think Justin was already upstairs. But Brad got to see those guys in a whole different light than what he would normally see them. So different than he would see them if he looked at their social media or their presence. Different than them sitting in a meeting having all these discussions. Just seeing, people sitting around with their friends having a conversation and even not about work, right? Like especially that Stephen was messing around with some guy at the bar just talking to him and like just being the piece of Stephen that allowed him to develop into what he is as a company is his ability to just have a conversation and interact with people. And Brad got to sort of see that from a periphery. And so it created the situation where now you know him different than you would any other time. So if we end up in just a meeting or we just have lunch somewhere, play golf with Stephen, like you're going to have all that history that you didn't have before. So it creates this interesting dynamic that lets you be more comfortable.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you go into a situation like that, right? And you go into a room with a group of guys and, you want to be able to contribute in some way, shape, or form, but it's my nature to kind of sit back, observe, soak it in, and then, hope to provide some value. But, for me personally, it's a huge benefit to go into a space like that where, they always say, surround yourself with people that are, where you want to be or where you want to get to. And like me going in there being probably on the lower end of the career path of a lot of guys in there, I feel like I was probably in the give and take role, probably taking a lot more than I was able to give here. But I think from a development standpoint, the amount of information I was able to take in was really awesome, I think, in that situation.
It was said a couple times by many of the folks in the room that surround yourself with people who know more than you do. Be the dumbest guy in the room was said a couple times, and I think it speaks to the idea that like each one of us, when we approach a situation, to let the people around us like be field level experts or whatever it might be, kind of soak in what they know instead of trying to direct. And I was thinking about it sometime probably late Friday morning, and that phrase had been said, I think no less than 7 or 8 times at some point throughout the conversation on both days. And I was like, man, we can't all be the dumbest guy in the room, because at some points I'm not suggesting.
No,
but at some point we're relying mutually, I think, on each other to provide perspective, and you are only the sum of your perspectives. And so if you approach everything as though your perspective provides the answer, then you're always going to get your version of what's right and wrong, as opposed to taking Dan's perspective or Keith's perspective or Eric's perspective, and like those other perspectives and applying them to the same situation. It doesn't make you the dumbest guy in the room, but it makes you smart enough to know that you don't have the only answer.
Yeah, and so one of the you hit on something there that I was gonna like. There's two different ways to it, and the first is obviously that there's so many people in that, so many qualified, intelligent people in the room, but they're experts, but they each have like a specific thing that you like. If you got an equipment question, it's Heath. Like Heath will tell you everything. I mean, he'll tell you how many gallons of fuel any machine burns at any. What I mean? He knows. It's just his passion. You know what I mean? When you look at Sean's really got a handle on a lot of the like technology stuff and how to try and use CRMs and how to try and all these platforms and all that sort of thing. And you go through each person. You know what I mean? Steven's very operational. You know what I mean? Very, but also with the way he's grown, he's gone bigger picture. So it's an odd dynamic of somebody who wants to be very granular with operations, but has now stepped off and said, okay, but what are we going to do? And it's amazing to watch them just fire off numbers, or I should say statistics, when they want to in their given thing. You know what I mean? Like they'll be talking and all of a sudden they'll shoot a number that is the right number. You know what I mean? Like labor dollars per employee. Like somebody said that at one point, and I'm not saying it's the right number, but it's the same number we've calculated, is to be good. And each of that happens with each of us. So it's not that you're the dumbest guy in the room, but like you said, that you're willing to know that everybody else has value in their opinion. And they have skill sets, and if you just can listen and not try and explain to everybody why you're right, then you can get a lot of information back, And ironically, that parlays into, like, again, part of the conversation on the way home is one of my own weaknesses is that I always have a reason why I do something. Now, that's not a weakness in itself, but the weakness is if I'm rationalizing everything, well, any decision I make, I can justify to you why I made it. It doesn't make it the right decision, and it doesn't make it good intel that I had when I had it, and it doesn't make it complete information when I had it, but I feel comfortable doing it. And so that was a really good atmosphere for me to react to that discussion, one of the discussions we had, because I had just been in a room where I would have made a decision without a lot of the information that they had at their disposal at all, because they knew it. So that's one of the harder parts of that is when you put yourself in that situation that you're in that room to Brad's point, to feel like, how do I contribute? And I think that to some degree, each of the guys and women, right? Because there was women there as well. Each of the people feel that way. You know what I mean? Like they believe they can contribute, but they're also trying to listen because they know this is their one chance in this 6 month window to hear something that somebody might say that's a point that they wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, I think it's cool because I think that no one was trying to hit home runs, right? I was listening to Kyle Schwarber talk about the home run derby or the All-Star game.
The swing off.
The swing off. Right, and they're like, oh man, three home runs on 3 pitches, and like, what were you thinking? He's like, don't hit a home run. Don't hit a home run. And I think like that was kind of my take on everyone's approach. Is like, not one person sitting in that room was like, I've got to stand up and hit a home run right now. I've got to say something so profound that these people feel like they got their money's worth when they book their flights and book their hotel rooms or whatever. And that wasn't the case. Each one of us, the leaders in that room, and then vicariously through them, each one of us got the opportunity to sort of like just hear like honest conversation, sometimes vulnerable conversation, transparent thoughts and questions and curiosity and exploration of like, here's how I'm doing it, but there's got to be other ways. And
I mean, I had one, and I don't want to say one takeaway because that minimizes everything else, but like, I was trying to sit here and think, one of the things I like to do on the podcast, I say like, well, Brian, what do you think about this? Ford, what do you think about this? So I try and direct it. And I'll do that here, but like one of the things that got me was, I think Steven said it when he said about each foreman has to be the CEO of their site, right? Like whether you want to call it a foreman, a superintendent, whatever, it doesn't matter what the role name is for a company, but that you be the CEO of your site, right? And I thought That was really profound. Like you're saying about like waiting for somebody to say something profound. It's really simple. It is not something we haven't said. We talk about autonomy, empowering our people, but I'd never really thought about it that way. That, you know what I mean? That to say like, you're not the foreman. You're the CEO. This is your site. Like it will live or die with you.
Yeah.
And if somebody else to help, it's like you went out and got a board, or you brought somebody else from the outside in to fix it. It's your job.
Yeah.
You run your job. You know what I mean? It was such a it was a little bit profound to me of a way to say it. And I had said to you, like, that might be something I start to say to the guys to try and have our team understand, like, that's the level of autonomy and empowerment I want you to feel, is that it's your job.
Yeah. And I thought that, because I think he followed up on the comment, and it, it's not managing the job, it's owning the job. And I think like we say stuff like that, like ownership thinking, right? We want people to own their responsibility, but I don't know that we often empower or hold accountable folks who aren't or are seeing it that same way.
Yeah.
And so to hear them like, all right, I don't need you to be a manager. I need you to be a CEO. I need you to own that job. Job lives and dies because of you.
Right.
So,
so for me, that was really, it was a profound
really
statement. It was a really simple, clean way to say it, that there's no misunderstanding it. You know what I mean? Not one of our foremen can I go to, and if I said that, they wouldn't know what I meant. Could they do it? That's a separate issue. Are they willing to do it? Separate issue. But from a delivery standpoint, they're going to understand exactly what the expectation is. Then it's just a question of, can they perform it, and are we willing to hold them to it? So for me, that was one thing that jumped out at me. Did you have something other than that specific, or did I steal yours with that?
No, you didn't steal it. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm trying to think if I had like one thing that jumped out at me. Put me on the spot.
Brad, you got a few minutes?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So, I mean, that was definitely one thing that stuck out, when he said that. But another thing in the group, and it was just a kind of a common theme, right, was, and I think we have it too, was everybody in that room really cares for their employees, right? Like not just like says they care, but really cares. I got to talk to a couple of those guys offline, which I feel is, as beneficial as sitting in that room, just on a different side of things, But even so, like one of the things Heath said in there is when he went off kind of on a little tangent talking about, financial success of his employees and stuff, how he went out on a 2-week mission to kind of talk to all of his employees that were not participating in certain things and sat down with each one of them. And like, that's just not something you do, like if all you care about is the bottom line, right? So like that was a common theme of everybody in that entire room. I thought that like they truly care about the people that work for them, take pride in, seeing them out there. One of the things Steven said to me that like stuck out, like one of his favorite moments of the year is when he has his company picnic and he just kind of stands back and like looks at everybody out there, and that's when he feels the most pride in what he does.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I picked up on that too when we were talking through a lot of like the human resources conversations, right? Like healthcare benefits was a huge conversation, and I know you had to step in and out for some phone calls, but like just hearing like the voices, the way they poured into like this problem, healthcare insurance, and it really is a problem because everyone's searching for a solution that meets their employees' needs to the greatest extent possible. Meanwhile, acknowledging that like this is an enormous expense for a company, and to try and like you can't just like bake it in. We've talked on this podcast dozens of times about the fact that you really don't get paid much more to move a bucket full of dirt in 2025 than you did 10 years ago. Yeah. Right. And to try and like, but those costs that are required, healthcare insurance being a huge one, to make sure your employees have the safety and security to do it on a day in and day out basis. They're not worried about their family being able to go to the doctor. They're worried about getting their job done, owning their sites, and like the amount of time and resources that go into trying to do that to end up with a result that just feels so unsatisfactory at times. So that really is, I mean, maybe because I take it so personally, because we talk about it so much. But that stuck out to me a lot when we were talking through those things.
No, that was a huge one. I mean, like you said, I had to be in and out. I had a couple things going on, but as I stepped in and out, it was borderline that people were very emotional about it. You know what I mean? They were so vested in the amount of time, and I'll use the word like wasted, trying to find a solution to a problem that is not our problem, right? Like in other words, if we have to figure out how to get a job done that we bid and it's a little bit more difficult or a little different than we thought, like we can invest our time and our talent in that to try and solve it. But it is really frustrating to have to invest those things in something that you first know you probably can't get a solution to. You're just trying to get the best, worst choice, right? Like the Don Hunter thing, right? The best, worst choice. And you know it. And it's so frustrating that you could hear the emotion in their voices as they were so frustrated, and to hear all of the variations and the jumping, you know what I mean? Where they had gone, we tried this crazy thing, and then we tried this crazy thing, and then we tried this normal thing, and then every time, and they don't work any better than the other thing, you know, any better than any other variation. And that's a conversation you and I had before we left, and you said, I'll go meet with these guys if you want me to. But I have explored every option. There is no answer. I'm just trying to find the best, worst answer. And there does appear to be one answer, right? Like I think there does appear to be a best, worst answer. It is also potentially the most risky answer, you know what I mean? Because if you're working outside the system entirely and becoming their insurance company, that there is risk to that, legitimate risk. But outside of that, none of us seem to be able to find a way. And some people have now leaned into that idea, and other people have like skirted it. You know, but it's hard because how do you say that you care about your employees? There's really only two ways to show it to them. You know what I mean? It's to maybe a few ways. You know what I mean? You can pay them, compensate and vacation and packages. You can provide good work and good equipment and a good work environment for them, and their benefits. You know what I mean? And so 1/3 of the things that we're trying to be the best version of a heavy civil company that we can be, we feel completely handcuffed. And so I think in that scenario, we really felt the emotion of those guys with the frustration that they could have shiny new equipment and they could pay their guys very well for the market they're in, and they do all these things. And at the end of the day, they're going to give them a healthier policy that they would love to give them a better one. They just can't figure out a way to do it.
Yeah. Brad, I was curious if there was anything that you expected to see or get from the peer group meeting that was what you expected, and then anything that was like way different from what you expected.
So I went in with like tempered expectations, right? Because like Dan said, we had gone to some in the past, and while it was a great group of people. The previous group that we had attended, I felt like the scope of what they did and maybe some of the geographical distance between us lended to making some of the information not as relevant for what I did on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
Some of the problems were just so different. You know, one of the companies I remember when we were there, we were talking about our labor concerns and stuff like that. And he was like, "Oh, we haven't had a labor problem in 30 years." And you're like, "Oh, well, we cannot relate
That's
there."
Not realistic for us.
So going in, so I knew a little bit about a lot of the companies that were there, did some research. So one of the really nice things about that is that while there's all different size companies in there, it seems to be that everybody in that room was of like mind, and also what we do is close enough to each other that it became really, really relevant to what we do, and some of the struggles we go through, right? Because every company, every person has struggles and successes, right? So you really go into a group like that, no matter your size, your success may be something somebody else is struggling with, and vice versa, and sometimes some of the larger companies, something they may be struggling with, the way we look at it on a different scale can help them succeed in that. And I think that's really where the give and take in there is.
Yeah. Well, that was a crazy point that Brad brought up. Remember, I remember at some point that Betsy from Beaver was talking about it, that one of the things that she gets out of it is that the younger, more nimble, smaller companies are able to try all these things, whereas they're like trying to turn a big ship, which is funny because we say we're a big ship trying to turn, because that's how we feel.
Sure.
But they have thousands or thousands of employees. Like they have, it is different.
Yeah.
And so she was. I think that she actually gains value from looking at our ability to just pivot, so to speak, and try something new, and then see if it works or not. And so she can see, did it work on that scale before she has to, because it would be so much harder for her to try it.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting point that you bring up.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that she was talking about that a little bit at the time from an IT perspective, right?
Yeah.
And the technology and how like trying something new or implementing a technology was difficult with their size because of the amount of buy-in it took. And I never really considered that because I do feel like at times, probably like, to the displeasure of our folks, we don't really hesitate to try something different to see if it's a better solution. Yeah. That's interesting.
So anything you didn't expect? That was what you did or didn't? I don't know which one I cut you off.
Yeah, like I didn't have, I tried to go in with an open mind. So I don't think there was anything, that kind of shocked me in any.
Yeah.
The other, there was also a gentleman that we met at Caroline's after the meetings were done with Stephen, who had perhaps the second most insightful line.
Oh yeah, words of wisdom.
Yeah, words of wisdom. Heath wrote it down.
Yeah.
Heath pulled his phone out and wrote it on his iPhone, and it was, "You should brush your tongue.
Yep.
Show up early.
Yep.
And look pissed off."
Yeah.
He said that was the key to success. Now I don't know if this gentleman is successful or not.
Well, there's
I'm not going to make any evaluation. There's no way to measure that. But he said it confidently.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it looked like he lived by it.
He did look like he lived by it, and he wrote it down. So
I think there's value in the words, right? I don't usually say don't usually say brush your tongue, and I don't usually say look pissed off.
But
like
you understood what he was saying.
Yeah, and like I have always told like people in my groups, my kids, or some like young adult groups that I work with, or when I'm coaching, like look like you belong. Right, so like if you're gonna show up somewhere, look like you belong, whether or not you do. Right. If you look like you belong,
well, and you know what's funny is I think if you, my great uncle, played in major leagues, and he used to say you have to look like a player before you step off the bus. Yeah. He used to say the second anybody sees you, you got to look like the thing, because you may be able to win, you might be able to succeed in your first at bat. Yeah. Purely because the pitcher saw you step off the bus, and if he sees you step off the bus looking like a mess, you might be out because the pitcher comes in confident. Or a pitcher comes in not confident. How much you bring to the table just in your appearance. But the funny part is if you clean his phrase up, right? He's saying, show up prepared, right? Like have brushed your teeth, be there early, don't show up late,
right?
And then look intentional about what you're doing. Like look like you are serious. And he said it in a funnier way, right? Yeah. Like in that setting. But sure. But to your point, it's good. It's sound advice.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So. That could be Steven's new friend. He might work for Mooselitz right now. I don't even know. He may have transferred.
He got an interview that night.
Yeah, he got an interview that night. He may have relocated. I can't even be sure.
We can probably replace a bulldozer.
He might be able to, maybe a crane. A tow truck he could probably replace. He was a big guy. Yeah. He kept patting Steven on the head. He said, I can't hear you down there.
I liked... the group's relatively young, right? So we've only had a handful of meetings. It stemmed out of interactions that came from other meetings and other like peer-related events, and so it's still like in its infancy. Is I think a little bit every meeting trying to figure out what it is. From the agendas, the locations, the how we meet, where we meet, why we meet, what we do while we're meeting, all of those things, and which I love. I think that's great because like everyone has a say and it has a voice, and I really liked that. Like even as we kind of wrap the meetings up, a lot of talk about like where does this go from here? Like Matt from Rosso had some really interesting ideas about like how do we continue to make this valuable and maybe dig in a little deeper and like get into each other's private space a little bit and behind closed doors and with a like stern but caring voice say what you're doing well and what you're not doing well. And I thought that was interesting because there's not really like you got to figure out what a good format is to keep that constructive and keep it relative to everybody. But I thought that was interesting.
No, yeah, I thought it was good. It was another productive meeting, and we set up the next meeting in January, and we go there, and then maybe we talk about that. In January, February. In February, we can talk about what came out of that. But I mean, I enjoy it. It's good socially. It's also good professionally that you get to be with people and see like there's other people going through the same struggles, the same accomplishments, the same things that you are, and have somebody that you can just call. You know what I mean? That's the other real value that I hope Brad gets out of it, that I know you and I have.
Yeah.
Adam wasn't there. Midwest Mall was tied up. But, we just developed some relationships that we're able to say, like, hey, I got a question, and I need to know the answer. And I think this guy will know the answer. Or at least I value his opinion enough to say that if I ask 2 or 3 of them and they give me an answer, it's more than I have right now. So let's do that. And there's real benefit in that.
Yeah, I agree. No, it was good. Brad, any last thoughts?
Any last thoughts in the 2020s? Because we probably won't see you until 2030, maybe.
No, I think we touched on everything, but it really is a benefit to get around people like that, like-minded and just driven to move their companies forward. So it was definitely impactful. So I appreciate the opportunity to go down there.
The hardest part, every time I walk away from one of these things, is not letting it like sit in my notebook, right? Like I took all these notes for 2 days, and then Monday morning, right back to work. And so, like, how do you just making sure it doesn't die in the notebook? I think that's important. So that's probably a good place to wrap it up. But thanks for joining us today, folks. We hope you got something from this episode, and we hope you come back for another one.